Are Americans cashing out? You better believe it, to the tune of $1 trillion in Q2 alone. What's going on? Let's get into it. Americans cashing out their home equity in record numbers? You better believe they are. Absolutely. You know, Tappable equity raised $1 trillion in Q2 2021 alone. It hit an all-time high of $9.1 trillion with a T. Quarter also sees largest volume of cash out refis in 15 years. I've been talking about this for over a year. I called over 40 lenders. Some banks like Wells Fargo initially said you had to have $250,000 sitting in a savings account. But a lot of other lenders were doing refis over a year ago. So, you know, when the COVID hit, they changed their guidelines and said you had to have a 700 FICO score and 20% down. But they were still allowing those cash out refis. So what are people doing with those refis? Living on it? So check out these interesting pearls. The net worth of U.S. households rose to a record $141.7 trillion in the second quarter, up 19.6% from a year ago. The Fed reported yesterday. So what is net worth? Net worth they use to measure your assets, your savings, your stock holdings, real estate, your liabilities, loan, credit card debt, and debt overall. So the unprecedented rise in net worth reflects two defining trends of the U.S. economy in 2021. Number one, obviously, a surging stock market and a red hot housing market. So of the 5.85 trillion increase in net worth, stocks accounted for roughly 3.5 trillion, and real estate appreciation was responsible for 1.2 trillion. Higher net worth also came with a big surge of, you guessed it, come on, IOUs, household debt. Jumped 7.9% in Q2, a more rapid pace than in previous quarters, sparring by skyrocketing home prices and obviously cheap borrowing cost. So let's get into the housing market. So the smoking hot housing market has brought in a fair share of troubles. The soaring prices have slashed affordability, and the country still sits in a dire home shortage right now. Those who own homes are using the strong market to take cash out. That's right, they're taking cash out of their properties. But as we all know, and I've been saying this for a long time, I know I got to get off the soapbox, but that brings risk in its own right. So check out these 6 points from Black Knight. I love that name, Black Knight. So number one, driven by the red-hot housing market, tappable equity, the amount available to homeowners before reaching a maximum of 80% combined loan-to-value, CLTV ratio surged nearly 40% from last year. Number two, as I stated, at $9.1 trillion in total, yet another record high. The average mortgage holder now has $173,000. That's right, folks, $173,000 in tappable equity, and you know they're going to take it all available to them. That's an increase of $20,000 from just the end of the first quarter. Number three, fewer than 3% of mortgage holders have less than 10% equity. That's the lowest share ever observed, with the overall weighted average CLTV now 46%. So the lowest mortgage to value leverage on record. Tapping in at number four, some 98% of borrowers in active forbearance have at least a minimum of 10% equity, as compared to the Great Recession, with 40% of all mortgage holders had less than 10%, but we still haven't gone underwater yet. Equity with 28% fully underwater. So it's early. I'm going to keep saying that throughout this presentation. It's early, folks. Number five, even when adding 18 months of deferred principal, interest, taxes, and insurance payments onto the total debt amount, only 7% of borrowers in forbearance would have less than 10% equity in their homes. So it's going to be interesting. Number 6, more than $63 billion in equity was withdrawn via 1.1 million cash out refinances originated in the second quarter. In the second quarter alone, the largest quarterly volume since mid-2007. You think that's a good thing? So when we look at rising home prices means Americans hold an all-time high, as I stated, of $9.1 trillion in tappable home equity, which they're starting to cash out at levels not seen roughly since 2007 housing bubble. When I delved into the Black Knight data showing home prices appreciating by roughly 20% in the last year, that's up a record 37% from a year ago. Leaving the average mortgage holder, as I stated, with $173,000 in tappable equity. You think they're going to tap all that equity? They're going to buy some cars, go to the Maldives. What are they going to do with it? So, but as long as prices don't crash, the rise in home equity, the value of the homeowner's stake in their home, after subtracting what they owe on their mortgage, of course, is also good news for borrowers who decided to put their mortgage payments on hold. Sure, there's a lot of people just put them on hold that could pay as well during the pandemic. So maybe they reinvested that money or went on some vacations. But put simply, surging home prices are giving owners hefty financial support while the pandemic rages on. Home equity, just real quick, home equity is, the difference between what an owner owes on a mortgage and the value of their home. So it can be used to pay for home improvements, pay down other debts, which is a smart move, or move into more expensive home. You're in your starter home and you want your forever home. And maybe they're buying cars, though. Not a good idea. And during the recession, it can be a key, safety net for people that are struggling right now in the pandemic. And I just stress using that money wisely. So in the meantime, the massive growth in homeowner equity has sparked a resurgence in cash out refinance among borrowers who can afford to keep, making their payments. So check out this chart. Look at the overall increase, pretty substantial. So, by tapping into their home equity, Americans are using their homes as pseudo credit cards while relying on property values to keep climbing. Ooh, if they go down, and I did a talk on this, so it's just, it's very, I can't stress it enough. It's very concerning. So when similar behavior happened, almost 15 years ago, the whole financial system had to be bailed out. We love bailouts, setting in motion a decade of slow growth and possibly, a permanent, and I emphasize permanent, disfigurement of the economy. So moving on to the moratorium barring the foreclosure proceedings against homeowners with federally backed mortgages expired on July 31st, but there has been no rush by lenders to repossess homes from delinquent borrowers, the good old Black Knight found. But I will tell you, delinquencies, if you know where to look, are up all over the country right now. So the Consumer Federal Protection Bureau has warned lenders that it expects them to reach out to borrowers who are roughly 120 days behind on their payments and give them a chance to apply for assistance, such as, and hopefully they'll do this, unlike they did in 2008 where they double dipped and took all the money in the homes. So maybe they'll offer them a loan modification before foreclosing on them. That remains to be seen because it didn't hold true in 2008. So despite the foreclosure moratorium expiring the end of July, right now the performance data shows very little impact on the number of loans rolling into active foreclosure, according to Black Knight. Now, and that we're only talking, that's at least through the first 3 or 4 weeks of August. So, the moratorium just ended, and banks are going to be required for loan modifications, people to refactor that money back into their loan. So once again, I can't stress this enough. It's very early, folks. Very early. So look at this chart of the forbearance types. So the different types of forbearance. Number one, portfolio and private, $520,000. Number two, Fannie and Freddie at $535,000. And number three, FHA and VA at $696,000. So, overall, the market isn't out of the woods just yet. There's still a large number of remaining pandemic-related serious delinquencies. As the home loans start to exit forbearance plans, foreclosures, starts, will offer the first signs of whether the U.S. will avoid another housing slump or dive into a mortgage crisis. So, that's a concern. Just how many delinquencies emerge could mean the difference between a stabilizing market overall and the potential for, bursting of another bubble, which we don't want. So for now, and it's early, this all ended in July, data suggests today's market rests on much sturdier foundation than in 2007. Absolutely. Why? People have more equity than they did in 2008. 98% of mortgage holders in active forbearance have at least 10%, as I said. And that holds true not in addition to what Black Knight is just saying, some other sources that I've looked at. So that compares roughly to 40% of borrowers having at least 10% equity during the Great Recession. So, as I stated earlier, folks, the internal data across the country shows defaults are up. So it's early. We have to keep an eye on it. Data overall up to almost 3 million homes in forbearance. Other sources I look at, some people were low as 2.3 million. Yes, there were people that got a forbearance and they didn't need it and they just took that cash. Some people were smart and maybe bought another piece of property with it, invested it. Other people see the equity has gone up so much, they didn't pay that, they didn't have to make a mortgage payment, and they're putting their house on the market, going to sell it. I know someone in a neighborhood that I own in that got so excited and emotional that they got so much more equity, but they want to live in Laguna Beach. Doesn't make sense to me. They just had a baby, and they're going to sell. They just sold their home. They're going to walk out with $700,000-800,000. They want to live in Laguna Beach, but they're going to live with their parents till January, and they're going to try to find something. I personally think they're going to be priced out. We'll have to see, but don't get emotional. Don't get emotional. So the forbearance is a concern. Like I said, 860,000 homes foreclosed in the last crisis. Right now, if the government didn't help out and 2.3 to 3 million homes went into foreclosure tomorrow, we'd have a biblical foreclosure crisis and housing bubble. So, the government is providing assistance. 10 million people were facing eviction. So all this is coming to a head right now. And the pandemic is still raging on here a little bit. There's been drops because of the vaccine and other things going on out there, some treatments available that people are becoming more aware of. So we need to get the pandemic under control. But the defaults concern me, and people have been pulling cash out for the past year. And initially when this crisis hit, banks were saying, we're not going to allow cash outs. We're not going to allow cash outs. A lot of money to be made from doing cash outs. So we have to monitor these cash outs and the forbearance, and will they allow people to do a loan modification, refactor that money back into their loan? Are they going to come after them, and possible institutional investors will come in and swoop in and buy these properties like they did for $36 billion of real estate in the last crisis? So I'm hesitant because I know people that wanted loan modifications back in those times. There are a few more checks and balances now that I've discussed in other videos. And we'll have to see, but I can't emphasize enough, it is early. It is early. So take care, be safe, and most of all, be kind to people. Life's too short. Ciao.